On behalf of my colleagues here and indeed the rest of the economic management team, which I have the privilege to lead, thank you all for this opportunity at this all-important dialogue. I also will, at this time, the very first time we're interacting after the passage of the 2024 budget, thank you on behalf of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for your support in swiftly passing his budget and your collaboration and cooperation generally. We have heard from my colleagues, and naturally they have virtually covered the field. Where we are as a nation economically is a much, much better place than we were on the 29th of May, 2023. We have heard from the Governor of Central Bank. He talked about the unsustainability. He talked about the importance of sustainability before the implementation of the 8-point agenda of the President began. We were in an unsustainable place in terms of the fiscal situation of Nigeria. We were on the road to economic disaster. We had expenditure which was wasteful and unsustainable by way of the subsidy, not just on fuel, but the subsidy on foreign exchange, which confused the incentive framework, and people were chasing cheap dollars in order to make instant profits. Of course, in turning back from that road, as we have heard, there will be dust. However, bold measures have been taken, and there have been positive results. If we look at the finances of the government today, there has been benefit to the Federation account. There has been reduction in the consumption of petrol by about 20 million liters because there was smuggling, apart from even wasteful use of that all-important resource. And likewise, there have been other benefits which have accrued as a result of the changes that have been made. However, there has been cost. Inflation has increased. The cost of living has spiked. And right from the onset, Mr. President committed to making sure that the poorest and the most vulnerable were not left behind. And that's why, as we heard earlier from the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, the palliatives, the interventions have been rolled out. But let us examine exactly where we are today after a series of economic reforms and intervention measures. And I will come back to the all-important issue of helping Nigerians with the cost of living. But first of all, oil production. Mr. President made a commitment to confront, to engage, and indeed to use state power to subdue the vested interests that had resulted in oil production and sales going down to as little as 1.25 million barrels per day. Where are we now as a result of those interventions in terms of security and collaboration and cooperation across all the stakeholders in that industry? We are at 1.65 barrels per day and rising. And that is the quickest way to give relief. The Governor of Central Bank just said now that In 2011, we were virtually at $100 billion a year from oil sales. So we can see the adjustment that has had to be made. Now we are on the way back up. 1.65 million barrels per day and rising. And in addition, the Minister for Budget had said that the bold measures that were taken are resonating around the world. We go to the IMF meetings, UNGA meetings, G20 meetings, and there is nothing but pride and admiration and deep respect for the courage that has been shown economically in Nigeria. And what has also resounded is that we have to look inwards. We have to focus on domestic resource mobilization. The chairman, FIRS, has said what they are doing in terms of domestic resource mobilization. I can tell you that with the application of technology, and this august body and the Senate, if you look at the Hansard of December 30, the Senate mandated that we go out and bring government revenue that was lying in MDAs and government-owned enterprises, but rightly belonged in the Consolidated Revenue Fund, to bring it in. And that has been done. And the results are a rise in revenue to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Similarly, in agriculture, if we need to stabilize the economy, two things need to happen. Inflation needs to be tackled. The governor of Central Bank has said what is being done. He has announced his targets for inflation, and the fact that inflation targeting will be a key element of the strategy, which is right because they're in charge of the targets of monetary policy. But in addition to that, when you look at inflation, a large element is food inflation. In fact, food inflation accounts for 33% of the consumer price index. So when you attack food production, raise food production, you bring down the price of food, you bring down inflation, you get a chance to bring down interest rates, and there lies the road to investment. I was recently in Nasarawa. I met all the stakeholders in the agricultural chain, and they were able to commit with confidence to a very good dry season harvest. And we know all the steps that have been taken to intervene in that sector, from fertilizer, from grain supply, to funding for rice, maize, wheat, and cassava to bring under production 400,000 hectares. So these are the steps that are being taken to get inflation down, to stabilize the economy, and prepare for investment. And just, I will also add that in terms of production, industry requires energy. I chair a power sector steering committee to deal with the issues in that sector. And on the issue of interventions, I must return to it. We are talking about increases in revenue available to all tiers of government through the federation account. And we are also talking about the ability of the federal government to raise resources. The commitment is that as things improve, even though there will be dust as we turn Nigeria into a building site through massive intervention in the housing sector, there will be, at every opportunity possible, further intervention on behalf of the poor, on behalf of the vulnerable, to assist with the cost of living rise, which is an inevitable result of having waited so long before we, as we heard earlier, turn the corner. And I think I will just end by saying that let us be confident, let us be calm, let us be assured that Nigeria has turned the corner in terms of its economic management, and the way forward is up. And at the same time, the poor and the vulnerable will be assisted at every turn. The overarching objective of Mr. President's 8-point agenda is to stabilize the Nigerian economy and investment climate such that domestic investment by Nigerians across all sectors can take place, as well as attracting foreign direct investment, investment in production of goods, investment in major services by foreign companies. That is the overall objective, because it is with that investment that there will be increase in productivity. The economy will grow, jobs will be created, and poverty will be reduced. Against that backdrop, which I will refer to and come back to as I do the needful and answer the questions of you, honorable members. Let me start from Honorable Abubakar from Jigawa. Yours was on the issue of tax waivers, and I will even add duty waivers. These are expenditure which needs to be well spent and not wasted. And the biggest wasteful expenditure that we saw has been cut out of the Nigerian scene was expenditure on subsidy, on fuel, subsidy, as I say, on foreign exchange. The level of tax to GDP is roughly around 10% now, and there is commitment to raise it to 18% within a few years, 18% of GDP. And that is so that the government has enough funds to do what it needs to do to lay the environment for private investment. There is a committee on fiscal policy and tax reform, which very shortly will bring before you some interim economic, tax, and fiscal measures in order to improve the investment environment. The second question from the Honorable from Jigawa referred to the removal of subsidies and importation. Clearly, the removal of subsidy has changed the landscape. And yes, what was envisaged was that with subsidy removal and enough liquidity in foreign exchange, there will be a situation where NNPC would be reduced to 30% of the import business and the private sector would come in. As we all saw, the supply response, the support in terms of foreign exchange liquidity did not come, and NNPC remained the only viable importer because it had the support of the government in a way which a private sector operator would not have. And given what was going on in the foreign exchange market, it is on your journey. You know the direction of travel, but there are times when you have to pause and slow down before resuming your journey. That is what happened in terms of what we assume would be the revival of the petroleum imports market to allow private operators to to also function efficiently. And now, of course, we have domestic refining into the bargain. Let me move on to the Honorable from Kogi, who talked similarly about crude oil exports and refined products. Basically, we know whatever we are saying here today about the need to get inflation down, the need to get Nigerians to enjoy a lower cost of living and an affordable lifestyle. Number one road to salvation is getting crude oil exports up. It is God-given. The price is at $80, $77/$80. You can't get much higher than that. In the days when we had $100 billion of revenue, the oil price wasn't that high, but production was at 2.2 million barrels. You can do the mathematics. In short, our easiest and quickest route to a better living standard for all Nigerians in the short term is raising oil production, oil exports, oil sales, bringing in foreign exchange. Non-oil exports are also key, and we have to focus on them. And what I will say about the ease of doing business that we need to improve as far as non-oil exports are concerned will come as part of the initiative for trade facilitation, the implementation of the national single window and the trade improvements in trade facilitation that it will bring will assist in improving non-oil exports, lowering the cost, making it more efficient, and of course, improving the time scale at which that can be done. Honorable asked me, I think, but he didn't wait to answer to hear the answer to his question. He said, "Have we turned the corner?" So let me just simply put it like this: we were going in a direction that was totally unsustainable. The fiscal deficit was rising and rising. Let me give you a metric, a figure that shows we have turned. The budget deficit last year was 6.11% of GDP. The projection for this year is 3.9%. I think anybody would say that is turning the corner. So please help me to pass on that response to the Honorable. When we talk about local government and we talk about the autonomy of local governments, or we talk about the performance of local governments, we are in a federation. Mr. President believes in federalism. Of course, he believes in democracy. He believes in federalism. He believes in fiscal federalism. And so, therefore, what belongs under the Constitution to the states goes to the states. What belongs to the local governments goes to the local governments. However, there is need. It is one country, it's one economy, and there is need for coordination. There's need for collaboration and cooperation. We have the National Economic Council under the Vice President, where the states, together with the federal authorities, come together to discuss matters of common economic interest.